Aaron Torres, host of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast and on Fox Sports Radio. And with Aaron Torres Media, he's got a little bit of a finger on the pulse of a few fan bases across the Southeastern Conference. It's been an interesting week, start of a very interesting football season. Aaron, how are you today?
So, I'm great. There's a lot of fans out there that don't seem like they're spirits right now. Hey, listen, Fayetteville is not the only place right now that seems that like they're about ready for basketball season. Nate Oates might be the most popular person in Tuscaloosa right now. I think with every Joe Milton overthrow, Tennessee is getting more and more ready for basketball season. So it's a weird time. You and I were texting a little bit before the show, Phil. I know we love college football because of the passion of the fans. This might be hyperbole, and maybe I say it every year. I don't ever remember a season where it seems like there are as many fan bases kind of frustrated through 2.5, 3 weeks, whatever it is, quite like this season over the first few weeks.
The difference is I guess we're not used to feeling that frustration coming from Alabama. Since Saban's first year, you'd be frustrated with the thought of potentially 2 losses by the end of the first month of the season. I know Saban gets a lot of criticism for this. Is a lot of it coming down on Tommy Rees as well? The two end up going together because one hires the other. But here in Arkansas, you felt the same thing between criticism of Dan Enos that goes along with Sam Pittman.
So, great question, Phil. I think Saban, I think, largely walks on water, right? And he should. He's the greatest to ever do it, in my opinion. Maybe others would disagree, whatever. What I think is going on in Tuscaloosa right now, though, is I think there has been frustration with the inability of the guys that Saban has hired to develop a lot of these players. And that obviously a lot of it falls on Saban from the developmental perspective as well. And part of it falls on Saban from the hiring perspective as well. And, I think when we were in the kind of second half of Saban's run in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever, I think we all just kind of thought, hey, the next Lane Kiffin, the next Steve Sarkisian is just going to show up. And that just hasn't happened. Tommy Rees is 34 years old, but you think about Lane. Think about this. Lane Kiffin not only had been a head coach at USC in Tennessee before he got the Alabama offensive coordinator job, he had been an NFL head coach. Steve Sarkisian had coached at the highest level. Tommy Rees maybe one day will get there, but I don't remember him being a candidate for other head coaching jobs before he got hired at Alabama. So it just speaks to, I think where the criticism is with Saban is has he missed on a few of these coordinators? And then I think the reality is creeping in too is I think it's becoming increasingly hard for him to get people to work for him. He's a demanding guy. The stat my buddy Ryan Fowler threw out to me this week was 42 out of 52 weeks a year, he expects you to work 7 days a week. That is insane, guys. And I know how hard you guys work. Phil, I know you're on the road all the time. 7 days a week, 42 out of 52 weeks a year? If you're a coach that's made your money, I just don't know who's going to want to do that. So that, to me, is where the criticism of Saban has come in. And I think really what it is, though, what it speaks to is there has been, and there's no doubt about this, just an inability to develop guys because they have way too much talent to look as bad as they do right now.
Just going across the road to Auburn, you got Auburn versus A&M this week, which I think is a sneaky good game. Could it be over for A&M this early as well? Can Auburn go into College Station and beat this Aggie team?
Yeah, A&M is one we didn't even mention a minute ago, Matt, and I agree with you, is that I think if Texas A&M loses this game, I don't know how realistic it is that Jimbo Fisher gets fired with that crazy buyout. But I do know if you can't beat Auburn at home in year one of a Hugh Freeze era where I think Freeze is a good coach, but they have so many new players. They are so far from being where they need to be. I don't know that publicly Jimbo Fisher will be able to recover from that. What's kind of ironic is with the way the rest of the SEC has looked, it's if you do get a win and you do look good, then all of a sudden you look up and you say, well, wait a second now. Alabama's coming to town in a few weeks. Their quarterback situation's a mess. We'll see about Ole Miss. Mississippi State, as I told you guys last week, I just don't think is very good. And I think A&M now all of a sudden could have some momentum going into the heart of SEC play. Obviously, I know they play Arkansas next week, so that's a game that would be at the forefront. But I do think if they win and they win convincingly and they look good, it's one where I think the fan base – let me put it this way. I think the fan base could go one of two very drastic directions this weekend. You win and you look good. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm with the way the rest of the SEC has looked. You either lose or you win ugly, and I think there is major concern going forward. And obviously, if you lose, period, there's going to be a lot of questions for Jimbo Fisher.
What's your viewpoint on this Arkansas LSU game? Now, not a lot of folks, I think, outside the state of Arkansas are giving the Hogs much of a shot. Even within the state, the sports book that's the most popular here in Arkansas has LSU a 17.5-point favorite. I'm expecting to see a good ball game. What's different about this game than any other time these two programs have met, Aaron, is that it's the conference opener instead of getting LSU after they play Alabama or getting them the last week of the season, which happened for, I think, like 25 straight years or longer than that. And you're getting LSU after they played tremendously against Mississippi State, and it comes after Arkansas, really laid an egg and beat themselves against LSU or against BYU.
Yeah,
pardon me.
No. Yeah, first of all, I don't know the history of this game like you guys do, but obviously I think back to Darren McFadden on Thanksgiving weekend, and I know that Missouri's kind of been force-fed as a rival to Arkansas fans, and I know that's another debate for another day, in terms of where Missouri is, but I just bring it up because I was surprised to see this so early in the schedule, but as far as the game is concerned, my personal opinion, I know maybe Hogs fans are a little bit down right now, I think two things are true in this game. I don't think LSU is as good as they looked against Mississippi State. I'm very down on Mississippi State. I told you that last week, guys. And if you watch that game, and I don't know if you guys had a chance to because I know you were covering Arkansas, LSU could do no wrong. And Malik Neighbors had 239 yards passing, and it was 239 yards receiving, and it was essentially all on the same play. Like the analysts really did a good job of breaking down. He was essentially beating his guy on the same route, and Mississippi State never adjusted. So I don't think LSU is quite as good as they looked last week. And I don't think Arkansas is as bad as the final score reflected. The bottom line is that you guys know, I'm sure you've talked about it pretty much nonstop since last Saturday, 14 penalties in that game. You outgained BYU by 100-plus yards. And I think there's a couple other things that are factors here. One, you have a veteran quarterback going on the road. You just can't put a price on that. And I think everybody still inherently trusts KJ Jefferson even after last week. Obviously, he wasn't the reason that they lost. And the other thing is, Arkansas has been able to get pressure on the quarterback this year. And I think Jaden Daniels is an upper-level SEC quarterback. I think he looked like a Heisman winner last week because there was essentially no pressure, and he was able to just sit back and do what he had to do. So that's all a long-winded way of me saying I think it'll be competitive. I'm not going to sit here and lie to your audience and say that I think that they're going to go into Baton Rouge and get the upset, but I do think the 17 is 2.5. I think Arkansas makes a competitive rivalry game. I think this game will mean a lot to them.
Aaron, top 10 game with Ohio State's athletes versus Notre Dame, and I'd say Notre Dame probably has the better quarterback. I don't know if Hartman can play on Sundays, but I know he's seen a lot of football at this college level, and he's surely competent and good enough. Does Notre Dame have enough athletes? Can they compete? Can they actually win this game against Ohio State?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting for a number of factors, but one, as you just said, Matt, it's not often that Ohio State has the inferior quarterback. It sounds weird because it's a top 10 game. I do think there will be a little bit of heat on Ryan Day if they lose this game, Ohio State, just because, at a certain point, it becomes a trend that you lose big games when the talent is equal or superior. The one thing I will say about Ohio State, for whatever reason, I think it was just in a little bit of a quieter time slot last week. I watched a lot of that game against Western Kentucky, and you can sit there and say it's only Western Kentucky. Well, Western Kentucky has one of the best pass offenses in college football the last few years, and Ohio State's defense looked really good. And so I just bring it up because that's one game. I can't sit here and lie and say I have a super strong opinion. I think this is definitively going to happen. But what I do think is I think it could look a little bit different than people expect, because I do think Ohio State's defense is probably better than people have given it credit for. And listen, they haven't been great defensively the last couple of years. We've seen them against Michigan, so I think people are kind of down on that group in general. But just watching them last week, I thought they looked really good on defense. And like I said, I think this game is probably a little bit more closer and competitive, and probably a little bit more low scoring as well than people will give credit.
Speaking of Michigan, better watch out. They finally get Harbaugh back.
Ooh,
Yeah, better watch out, because they were playing for coach after a self-imposed 3-game suspension. Yeah, very, very odd.
Well,
18. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, they haven't blown people off the map, but one, it's hard to stay motivated when you know you're going to win. And two, I was thinking, do they come out with the, extra motivation of, we saw in week 1 they were holding up, whatever it was, 4 fingers, 3 fingers for Jim Harbaugh. I'm curious if this is like a rallying cry in that locker room. I don't know if it is. That's one game where Michigan's going to win, but I have no strong opinion on what to make of them through 3 weeks. That was all I was going to say.
Well, another one of the storylines going into this game is TV ratings, and I usually kind of ignore a lot of the stuff about the ratings, but I think some people have made a pretty interesting point. Like with all the spotlight of Colorado and having this top 20 matchup at Oregon and being on primetime at ABC, legitimately could end up with more viewers than Ohio State Notre Dame at night on NBC, which is crazy to think about, but there are some folks who think this could happen.
Well, what's interesting to me, Phil, is it seems pretty clear to me that and I'm not a TV expert. I work at Fox, and I have no idea what goes into these decisions. But the game is on ESPN, and it seems pretty clear to me that ESPN 3-4 weeks ago, when they announced the game time, made the conscious decision of, we don't want any of our marquee games going head-to-head with Notre Dame, Ohio State, because even Florida State Clemson is a noon kickoff. And so, I bring it up because I think the thought was, hey, we can get a lot of eyeballs at that 3:30 slot. And now I'm sitting here saying, I bet if ESPN had to do it all over again, knowing what they know after the Colorado State game, I think they would take their chances of going head-to-head on Saturday with Notre Dame, Ohio State. Now, we'll never know. But listen, would it shock me based on what we've seen the last few weeks if, in fact, it outrated Notre Dame, or if it outrated Notre Dame, Ohio State? It wouldn't, to be perfectly honest, just knowing the eyeballs that were on that Colorado State game. So, listen, I know a lot of people get tired of the Deion talk, but you can pretend you don't care. People care. The millions of people that were watching at 2:30 in the morning to see if they would win or to lose. I don't think it's hyperbole to say at least through 3 weeks we haven't seen anything quite like it in college football.